All right, good morning, dear friends, and welcome to the main object big book study of Alcoholics Anonymous. I am an alcoholic. My name is David. Hello, and incredible. I mean, what are there? 25 of us. That's wonderful. At 6:30 in the morning. So, thank you all for being here. And with that, I am going to invite our friend Karen S. There we go, to read the AA preamble.
Morning, everybody. My name is Karen, and I'm an alcoholic. The AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of peace, of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
Karen, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And next, I'm going to ask you all to join me in inviting God into this meeting this morning with the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Hello everyone, good morning. We are a line by line big book study. We go slowly through the book. There are some new folks here. The whole goal, the whole objective is to turn this thing, and if you don't recognize this, this is the study edition, to turn this one or any big book into a powerful tool that we can use, that we will use to share our experience, strength, and hope, and carry the message and receive God's grace one day at a time in order to stay sober. And so how we do that, one way we do that is we categorize the text into certain categories. It helps kind of unmask some of the confusion that might come about through when we read the book. Like, for instance, here you go, there are 5 categories: questions, directions and explanations, promises, warnings, and history. The colors you see next to each of those are the highlighters that I use. And this really helps me use the book as a tool rather than just a kind of this musty old piece of historical, I don't know, whatever, that doesn't really reveal its secrets. So we're about revealing the secrets of the book. The format is I'll share until about 7 o'clock. I might go a little over today. We'll see. Although we may not finish out the chapter. We'll see. And then we will open it up from 7 to 7:15 for comments, thoughts, suggestions, what have you. Just FYI, especially for the new people that may be on the call, this meeting is recorded, audio only, of course, and we stay within the bounds of the traditions. And actually, only my part, or we only record until 7 or when I finish my thing, because I don't want anybody's comments. I don't want anyone to feel like their comments are recorded and out there, because we post everything on YouTube for the archives in case you miss a meeting. So that said, we are finishing up, hopefully, page, we're finishing up chapter 3, more about alcoholism. We are on page 41. We are about halfway through our story with Fred, the accountant. And just to summarize, in our last session, we were introduced to Fred And Fred was once more he was the third example we saw of how high morals, self will, a strong will, and a great deal of self awareness, while essential for solving almost every other problem we have or are confronted with in life, all of those things will fail us when we try to use them to stay sober. They one day simply crumble when confronted with what the big book calls the twisted mental thinking that defines our alcoholism. Now, Fred, what we'll see today is Fred describes how he finally recognized this, that his problems, his favorite problem solving tools, were not going to help him, and that led for him to painful ego deflation, followed by the recognition that his only solution was going to be in drastic spiritual action. As difficult as this awareness may have been for Fred, what it did for him is it almost immediately triggered a profound, I guess you would call it a chain reaction that alters his understanding of God, himself, and his purpose in life. And as the chapter comes to a close, our author, Bill W., drives home the point one more time, and that is, our mental faculties cannot save us. As Bill writes, our defense must come from a higher power. And so, as I said, we are on page 41. We're at the bottom, the last paragraph there. And Fred is now in the hospital, and he's recalling this last slip. And he says, as soon as I regained my ability to think... Oh, and by the way, excuse me, everything from the bottom of the page here is in pink because it's a warning, okay? As soon as I regained my ability to think, I went carefully over that evening in Washington. Not only had I been off guard, I had made no fight whatever against the first drink. This time I had not thought of the consequences at all. And you see that's in italics, right? So that means that Bill really wants to emphasize that. He's saying, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't get anything else, get this point. And that is this man who is a chronic relapser. And he is a sort of a repeat visitor to Alcoholics Anonymous. He may have been in more meetings than some of us here. But he makes no fight whatsoever against that first drink. And he doesn't even think of the consequences at all. And the italics also, I think, are Bill's way of saying, folks, this applies to you too. So he said, I commenced to drink as carelessly as though the cocktails were ginger ale. Now I remembered what my alcoholic friends had told me, how they prophesied that if I had an alcoholic mind, the time and place would come, I would drink again. All that is warning. I want to go back to something just briefly. Remember, if you were here last week, what we talked about was the parallels between Fred's story and the account that Bill shares with us in A Vision for You, and how one is sort of the negative example and one is the positive example. And so some of you may be thinking, well, David, you're just stretching it a little too far. Okay, the two guys, okay, yes, they were in hotels and they were crossing a threshold, but come on, it's not really parallel. And I just want to show you something because I really thought this was so cool. Um, where is it? Okay. First of all, this is a little plug for the let me. This is a little plug for the study edition of the Big Book, and why I do that little plug. And this is what for me the study edition helps turn the Big Book into a powerful tool. Because what I can do is I say to myself, I remember reading somewhere in the Big Book about ginger ale. And let me go, where is it? There it is. Let me go to the index in the back of the study edition. And okay, we're on page 41 right now. But it's also, ginger ale is also listed on page 154. And where is that? It's when Bill is thinking about going to, in the hotel, joining the gay crowd inside. He said, of course he couldn't drink. Why not sit hopefully at a table, a bottle of ginger ale in front of him? So I think what Bill is really trying to do is say, ladies and gentlemen, here's what happens when you don't have a spiritual solution. And here's what happens in the exact same scenario when you do. And so just hold that, bookmark that, because obviously that's a little further along in the text, but we'll get to it eventually. So anyway, back to the text. We are now on the top of 42. The next few sentences or the next two sentences, I should say, are pink for a warning. And he's talking about what AA members have said to him. They said that though I did raise a defense, it would one day give way before some trivial reason for having a drink. Well, just that did happen and more, for what I had learned of alcoholism did not occur to me at all. And again, I want to drive home, folks, this is so important. Fred is not a newcomer. He's not some guy off the street. Just like most of our examples that we see here. Definitely Jim, the car salesman. These are people who are soaked in, it's probably not a great metaphor in this case, but these are people who are steeped in AA knowledge. They know the lingo, they've probably read how it works at meetings. It doesn't matter what they're saying, because it'll get pushed out of your brain in favor of a drink. All right, and the rest of this paragraph I have as a reward, so I have it in blue. And it doesn't sound like a reward at first, but let's work through this. I knew from that moment I had an alcoholic mind. I saw that willpower and self-knowledge would not help me in those strange mental blank spots. I had never been able to understand people who said that a problem had them hopelessly defeated. I knew then it was a crushing blow. Maybe you might be thinking, David, you're a little morbid. Why would that be a reward? That's a horrible thing. He's like in a horrible state. Anybody want to share, or anyone want to take a stab at what I think he's experiencing?
I do.
Go ahead, Kathy.
I don't know. The first thought that went through my mind is
once I understood what the problem was, I could then, fix it. Not alone, of course, but then it was like, okay, whew, that's good. Now I know what's wrong with me.
Yep. I think, and I'm going to add one more thing to that. Um, does everybody remember our spiral of the key ideas or the key characteristics that we see in both Bill and Dr. Bob's story that lead them to sobriety? There are 4 elements that lead them to becoming sober, and that is medical facts, high resolve, a spiritual design for living, and ego deflation. What did Fred just experience? Ego deflation. Does that make sense? Everybody with me? Okay. So that's why I have this section as a reward. John, yes, go ahead.
My name's John. I'm an alcoholic, and perhaps this man, for the very first time in his life, with the knowledge that was imparted to him by certain AA people, was able to think about the process that he went through prior to and during picking up a drink. Was able to think about it now. Because when I was out there drinking, I never thought about it, the scenario at all. I had to have AA tell me, John, you have an allergy and you have a mental obsession. Then I could think about, then I could look back through my drinking and think about, yeah, I come to a better understanding of what my real problem is because I'm able now to think about it armed with some knowledge that was imparted to me by the good people of AA. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, John. And as we see with Fred, what that knowledge does is it leads to for him a sense of complete defeat, complete hopelessness. Because one of the things, and we'll see here. Let's keep going. And the beginning of the next paragraph is the first 2 sentences I have in green for directions. 2 of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me, and it was probably Bill and Bob, or Bob and Bill D. They grinned, which I didn't like so much. Then they asked me if I thought myself alcoholic and if I were really licked this time. I had to concede both propositions. And that last sentence about conceding both propositions, that is blue. That is a reward. That is surrender. Kathy, go ahead.
This just occurred to me, and I apologize for jumping in. But when you mentioned, his ego finally, began to deflate. And this was true for me, while it didn't feel like it ended up being the beginning of hope for me. I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like those 2 emotions were running parallel in my mind, that when I said, the jig's up, if you will, I'm done. And now I understand what you're talking about. And I actually, can relate, in a very strange sort of series of events, all happening seemingly all at the same time. It was almost like a relief. Like, now I know, and now I have a plan of action, if that makes any sense.
Makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. There are some people who, and it may be different for different people, but there may be some people who would say that that relief, and we'll see it with Fred in a little bit. It's the beginning of grace being able to come in, and that spiritual awakening. So anyway, moving forward. Again, the next two sentences are green for directions. They piled on me heaps of evidence to the effect that an alcoholic mentality, such as I exhibited in Washington, was a hopeless condition. And how did they do that? Did they pull out charts and graphs? Did they whip out their iPad and show him a PowerPoint? No. They cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen. Now, that is green for a couple reasons. It's an explanation of what happened. But as an alcoholic, I'm reading that, and those are my marching orders. In effect, what Bill is saying, he's telling a story about Fred, but he's also telling about how to 12th step people. Does that make sense? He is saying, hey, AA members, this is about you too. It's not just about Fred. And so when you're meeting some newcomer, make sure that you cite dozens of cases out of your own experience of exactly how you were powerless. And when I first realized that, what I said to myself is, well, I know I'm powerless over alcohol, but I've never sat down and thought about all the times that I was actually in a position where I tried to use my mental faculties against alcoholism and I failed. I never thought of that. And so what I realized, this was sort of a wake-up call for me, because what I realized, even though I had been sober a while, I realized I know this stuff happened to me, but I've never explained alcoholism to a newcomer in this way. I would tell them things that I heard in meetings, but I wouldn't tell them the things that the book told me to tell them. Does that make sense? So they cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen. And this last sentence I have as a reward. Because what's the impact? So we're thinking, okay, these members are citing cases out of their own experience by the dozen. What's the result of that? Let's look at the last sentence of this paragraph. This process snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I could do the job myself. So, by me conveying my ego deflation, my process of ego deflation, it may help another alcoholic relate to it in such a way that it helps be a it serves as a catalyst for their own process of ego deflation. And bear in mind when he's talking about, and this is I think this is so important. When he's talking, when Fred says that I could do the job myself, Fred does not mean I could do the job without Alcoholics Anonymous. He's not saying that because he is a regular AA attendee. What he's talking about is that he could not do the job without completely surrendering, perhaps first to a sponsor, then to a higher power. See, Fred was, up till that time, Fred was practicing what I practiced for a long time, and that was the Alcoholics Anonymous home study program, which meant that I would go to meetings, hear all the information, and then use it to formulate my own mental solution that I would work elsewhere, at home alone. Not in front of you people, and certainly not with a sponsor. So the next couple sentences are in green. They outlined the spiritual answer and program of action which 100 of them had followed successfully. Though I had been only a nominal churchman, their proposals were not intellectually hard to swallow. Green, directions, which means that this is the brilliance of this story, because Bill's not just saying, hey, here's what happened to Fred. Bill's saying, again, yo, AA member, here's what you got to do. So pile on the examples of your own hopelessness. Then outline the program of spiritual action. And there's another, we're going to see in this paragraph, there is what is probably an even more important piece of direction for the AA member, for the person doing the 12th step call. So Fred continues, but I have the rest of this paragraph in blue for a reward. But the program of action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. Let's hold right there. Was pretty drastic. I don't know about anybody else, but I have been very guilty at times of wanting to be so welcoming and accommodating to the newcomer that I make it sound like this program is low maintenance and easy. And all you got to do, and like I try to soft sell in order to get them in the door. And I say to myself, well, when they get committed, then I'll tell them about the hard work. Then I'll tell them about the ego deflation. But guess what, gang? It's not just my desire to attract the newcomer. It's my fear of a difficult conversation. It's my own fear of rejection. Of somebody saying, well, David, thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to try to solve it myself. See, what Bill and Bob understood is that by doing that, by telling them the harsh reality of what we have to do to stay sober, we're actually saving them. By soft selling it, we could be signing their death warrant. Does that make sense? Because what people then do is they keep coming back, trying the simple low maintenance approach to this, and they don't do what they need to do in order to have that spiritual awakening. Go ahead, Kathy.
I feel like I'm co-chairing here, and I apologize, everybody. But anyhow, spiritual synergy, to my mind, is what's taking place. So it looks like we're helping the newcomer, and we by all means are. But then at some point when I'm uncomfortable, I'm working my own program. I'm growing closer or not closer to my God. And that synergy that takes place where I can't tell the difference between your program, the sponsee's program, and my own program. And while we may be signing the death warrant of a sponsee by not telling them the truth because we're so uncomfortable, I would also argue I'm signing my own because I'm, again, taking my own will back right in that moment. I'm driving the train. I got the wheel. So
one of the things, thank you, Kathy. One of the things that helps me to see this was when I read AA history and I saw they were so desperate for people to take this program and run with it. Yet, despite that desperation, they turned away most people who came. Because most people who came through the door weren't willing to do the spiritual action. And just to, and you know what, ladies and gentlemen, I am not going to try to go to the next page because then I'll eat up all the time, but I do want to make a point clear because let's finish out this chapter and then I want to circle back to one phrase they use. But the program of action, though entirely sensible, and the rest of this paragraph I have in blue for a reward. The program was pretty drastic. It meant I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out the window. That was not easy, but the moment I made up my mind to go through with the process, I had a curious feeling that my alcohol condition was relieved, as in fact it proved to be. He had a spiritual awakening. That's what happened. My question is, first, this is what I asked myself. When I'm describing the program to somebody, am I describing it in a way that may be attractive, at least to me, but clearly indicates that it's drastic? Because it's pretty drastic, right? Pretty drastic. That's what it says. Now, hold on. I want to show you folks something. Again, this is the power of the study edition. Because you may be saying, well, come on, David. They say, Bill uses the word drastic once to describe the program. What's the big deal? You know, don't like get so excited about this. Let's look for a moment in the index. Back to the index about the word drastic. It's used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times in the main text. Okay, but it could be used in a lot of different ways. And so let's see how it's used. On page 14, what does Bill say? He's talking about, this is Bill's story. These were revolutionary and drastic proposals. Oh, once again, he's describing the program as drastic. Page 76, we subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. It's drastic. It's not easy. It's not simple. Page 80. Before taking drastic action, which might implicate other people, we secure their consent. And on page 94, he's talking about working with a newcomer. He may rebel at the thought of a drastic house cleaning which requires discussion with other people. And again, I'm going to make it sound like I get a commission from these. I don't. But I will tell you folks, I did not realize that the program required drastic action until I got a study edition and could see very clearly how the word drastic was used those 5 times to describe our program of action. And I'll just close with this. If the program was not described to you in a way that part of you, you may have wanted it, you may have desired it, but if part of you did not go, ooh, ouch, I don't know about that. If part of you did not think that, the program was then not described to you properly. Do you see what they're saying? Because when it's described properly, the natural reaction people should have is, ooh, that's pretty severe. But I have no other option. And with that, why don't we open it up for discussion? And you might see there are 3 questions for reflection, and we can talk about those, or we can just talk about what I went on about today. And the first question is, am I able to list at least a dozen examples when my own self-awareness and mental strategies failed to keep me sober? Second, do I see my dependence on self-awareness as a form of, I didn't even talk about this. My own dependence on my self-awareness and my own mental faculties. It's a form of pride that blocks spiritual dependence. Why? Because I'm playing my higher power. Why is such awareness critical to my sobriety? And lastly, could I describe my own step work efforts as drastic? Why or why not? And with that, we'll open it up. Thank you.